Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In case you don't know yet, my name is Jonathan Davis, and tonight I'm going to be walking through with you how to make guacamole as I have learned from working at El Torito Grill. Now, in today's society, you can pretty much go out and buy anything you want at your nearest supercenter or grocery store. And if that's the case, you might be asking yourself, why would I want to make guacamole if I can just go buy it? And the answer to that is quite simple. By going out and buying it, you just don't get that satisfaction of making it yourself. And you really don't know what's going into it, and you don't have that creative freedom that you would get if you make it yourself. So it may be quite intimidating at first, but it's really a simple, easy process, and I'm going to walk you through it. So with that, let's get started. Now, the first thing is you want to begin at the grocery store. If you don't pick the right ingredients, you're not going to get the best guacamole that you can, and it mainly starts with the avocados. So here I left one avocado, and it may look like the lighting, but trust me, it looks how it is. You can see it. It's kind of like a brownish, like a darker brown. It has a few lighter brown spots, which is a really good sign because in most stores you're going to find them green. They're going to be not ripe yet, and occasionally, but you don't want them to be super light brown. If they're like a light brown or super dark brown, chances are they're already spoiled and you don't want them. If you have to pick one, pick on the side of the lighter green and just wait for them to turn into like more of a darker brown color. And you can really tell if they're fresh by squeezing them. Now, if you squeeze them and they are just a little bit squishy, then they're perfect. If you feel like you could easily just crush them and squish all the way through them, chances are they're overripe. And if they're too hard, they're going to be underripe and you won't be able to make guacamole with them. Next is picking your other ingredients like your tomatoes and onions. Now, onions, you just use pretty much any onion you want to use. Personal preference, it doesn't really matter. I do not have any tips of picking a ripe onion. Most of the time, they're going to be fine anyways. Tomatoes are very picky in particular. If you can't find a good ripe tomato, and by ripe, let me show you here. I picked these ones up, and you can see how they're bright in color. They don't really have any blemishes. They don't have any soft spots. So these are good. If you can't find any good ones, honestly, don't even worry about tomatoes. They're not a super key ingredient, and you don't really need them. They're an additive flavor that I like to use because it spices up your guacamole a little bit, but they're not necessary, and it's not worth buying bad tomatoes. Now, for the cilantro, now there's a huge warning on cilantro at the moment, so be careful when you buy your cilantro to make sure that it comes from the USA. If it comes from Mexico or anywhere from south of the border, don't buy it. Just don't risk it right now. And with the cilantro, you can see it's kind of it's getting a little bit past prime just because you can kind of see it's a little bit droopy and it's not as like fresh. When you buy it, it'll be super green. It'll be super like perky almost. It's a weird way to explain vegetables and plants, but you can tell it. If I look at it, you can kind of tell. And that's the key thing. Next, along with ingredients, you want to make sure that you have everything set up with your equipment wise. Now, when you make guacamole, generally speaking, you can put everything in to the container that you're going to store it in, which is really convenient because you don't have to make a huge mess and get all sorts of different bowls and whatnot. And for this process, I've already cut most of the food up to make it a little bit quicker, so I put it on plates, but if I wanted to, I could just put it all in this little container right here and be good to go. Now we'll talk about your knives. For most of the cutting, I use your standard, normal kitchen chopping knife, and this works great for pretty much most of it. It's not exactly needed. If you wanted to, you could just put everything into a blender and blend it to oblivion. It'll come out just the same. It'll come out a little bit smoother, but generally speaking, you don't need to worry about it. So you can use your chopping knife for most of it, or you can use your serrated knife, which I personally use these for the avocados just because it's easier to get them open. And you want a spoon for digging out the avocados, and you want a fork for mixing. Now that you have everything all set up, we're going to get started. Right? So the first thing I typically start with is the onions, just because I like to get them out of the way, and as soon as I get them, I can put them aside so I'm not getting stuff in my eyes. And I don't have to worry about them getting bad from not being in the refrigerator. So I'll cut up the onions. And when you chop them, you really just want to chop them into little bite-sized pieces. They usually break apart pretty easily. So you don't have to worry about chopping them too fine. It's kind of more of a personal preference. Me, I like my onions a little bit thicker, so I would only chop them up a little bit. But you can chop them as fine as you want and blend them in. If you don't want onions, it's perfectly okay. Same with any of your ingredients. If you don't want them, don't worry about them. Next would be the tomatoes, which when you cut up the tomatoes, you just want to cut them into little pieces. The smoother you get them, it'll kind of come out a little bit more runnier. But I like my things a little bit chunky, so I chop them up just a little bit. Now, for the tomatoes and onions, typically you can put them in a blender and it'll be fine. When it comes to the cilantro, generally speaking, you want to chop them up yourself. When you put them in the blender, because they're so leafy, it just tends to kind of mush them around and it doesn't really cut them. When you chop them, you can get them into like a fine little, almost like leafy, not paste, but you can really chop them up and make it better so you're not getting chunks of leaves while you're eating, because that's just kind of gross, honestly. And last but not least, out of your normal ingredient, is the peppers. Now, peppers, again, you can also blend them, but personally, I like to chop them just because a lot of people don't know this, but when you use a pepper, it's actually this little piece right here that has all the seeds and the stem that's the source of your heat. When you put it in the blender, it's a lot harder to put in specifically how much you want. If you put it in a blender, chances are you're going to get a lot more than you really want in there, and it's going to come out a lot hotter than you intended it to be. So now that I've got everything in order, which side, we're going to move on to the avocados. Now, I've already cut up most of them, but I left one so that way I can show you exactly how to do it. Now, even though just because you cut up everything first, it doesn't really matter which order you put them in, just because eventually you're just going to mix them all together anyways. So when it comes to cutting an avocado, usually you want to take your serrated knife and you want to just push in, get a cut in until it stops. It's going to stop because there's a pit in the middle. You can't cut all the way through, so you don't have to worry about that. And once you hit that pit, you're just going to work it around, kind of like a sawing motion. It's going to work all the way through until eventually you come up to where you've already cut. And that is pretty much it. Now you just have to peel it open. So you just kind of pull it apart. And voila, you've cut yourself open an avocado. That is the hardest part right there. Now, I'm going to start with the side that doesn't have the pit in it. You're going to take your spoon and just kind of scoop it out like you would anything. Really easy. The main thing is you don't want to get the peel of the avocado in with your guacamole, because the peel does not taste very good, and that will kind of just ruin everything. So don't put the peel in it. Now, a lot of people don't know how to get the pits out, and it's kind of funny if you just want to watch people try. But a little tip is usually you can kind of take the spoon and dig around it, and I don't know if I'll be able to here, but one tip, usually you can take the knife and kind of just like pry it out a little bit, or sometimes if you're lucky, you can push in with the knife and it just pops it out. Unfortunately, it's not going to do it right now because it's too far in. So we're going to take our spoon and we're just going to kind of dig it out like such. And that's it. And then we're going to take our spoon again and just continue on scooping out the avocado. And that's it. So there. Now we've got our avocados peeled. We've got all our other ingredients cut. And we're literally just going to combine them one by one. So I'm going to start with the onions. I'm going to go to the tomatoes. And put in the cilantro. Now for the cilantro, I usually use about a fourth cup. And you kind of want to be careful because cilantro has a huge taste to it. So if you put a lot in, you can really tell, and you don't want to do that. So just going to drop that right in, and then we're going to take our peppers, just kind of drop those in, and now we are ready to mix it. We'll wash our hands off real quick. Now everything is in the same bowl. Now here you can see everything's all in, and we're literally just going to mix and mash. To mash, what we're going to do, we're going to take our fork and our spoon, and you're going to hold it kind of like you're ready to eat, and you're just going to do crisscross scissor motions throughout the whole entire mixture. And what this is going to do is this is going to break up the onions. This is going to really like chop up the avocados so you're going to get that mash that you want, and it's going to mix everything in. You're going to scoop it kind of like you're scooping ice cream, just kind of knead it like you're kneading it. It's going to really just kind of have fun with it. Put your favorite music on, just go to town, and then super quick, super easy. Now you may be wondering why I cut everything up beforehand, and again, it is entirely just because I wanted to make this as quick and easy as possible, and I really wanted to be able to focus on the actual speech instead of going over and making this like a cook show. And again, like I said in the beginning, you could essentially just put everything into a blender and everything will come out perfectly fine and it'll be none the wiser. But I just don't like cleaning blenders, so I do everything the fun way. So now we're kind of just mixing it around, everything's good to go. And after quick little turns here and there, that is pretty much it. We are done. Look at that. You got your nice guacamole all blended in. It looks beautiful. It smells delicious, and it probably tastes pretty good too. And just a couple additives. You could usually you want to put some salt and pepper in there, and you want to put it to taste. I've always had a problem before with not putting enough salt in. So what I would typically do is put a little bit of salt, mix it up, taste it, and then see if I need to put more in or have someone else taste it. And then same with pepper, you want to put just a little bit of the same. And when it comes to guacamole, you can really put a lot of variations into it because it's more of your own creation. And that's what makes it fun, because everyone's guacamole is going to be different. And when I worked at El Torito, we would put like garlic powder in it, and put cumin powder, I believe cumin powder in it, and it would create a different sort of feel. But typically, when you're just going to your games, I just put the normal salt and pepper, and then afterwards, you would add in lime and lemon juice. And the cool thing about adding the lime and lemon juice is it's good for the taste. It tastes a lot better when it's in there. And if you ever left a banana open, or if you ever cut apples and left them open, eventually they'll start to brown. And avocados will do the same thing. Now, cool little science fact is that the lemon and lime actually help fight against that. So you put the lime and lemon in there, and it'll help not only make it taste better, but it'll also help fight against the browning. And when you're done, you really want to put it in as much of a seal-tight container as possible, or just take it straight over to be consumed. It'll start to brown within a couple hours usually. So if you're gonna leave it out for more than a couple hours, definitely put something over it. If you let it sit in the fridge overnight, it'll definitely taste better the next day because all the flavors get to mix together. And I've actually found it to be a little bit spicier. There is a bit of a myth or kind of a wives' tale. I'm not sure if it works or not, but I was told that if you leave the pit of an avocado in the guacamole, it'll actually make it a little bit spicier and stop it from browning. Personally, I haven't found much of a difference, but if you like to do it anyways, it can't hurt any. And so the one advice I would give particular is when it comes to peppers, the greener the pepper is, the less spicy it is. The redder it is, the more spicy it is. So really be careful with picking your peppers, and be careful putting them in, because you can always add more to make it hotter, but you can't take out the pepper once it's mixed in. It's just not possible, so be careful. And sometimes what even I will do is I will bring a little pepper with me to the event, or maybe chop it up a little bit, and if people say it's not spicy enough, I can always add it in, and it's not going to hurt anything. And generally people appreciate that more because it shows that you're trying to cater specifically to them. So now that you've seen that it's really quite simple and it's really easy and efficient to make, I challenge you guys to go out and make your own and really be creative with it. If you want to put bacon in it, put bacon in it. If you want to just be plain and simple, just use straight avocados, you can use just straight avocados, mash them up, and you're still getting guacamole and you're still getting the same effect. So go out to that next football game and have a great time and really show people that you can be a master of the kitchen with simple ingredients.